Tonight, Labour landslide. Decision day in Britain as a new Prime Minister prepares to take over.
A Labour landslide.
Shifting the course of the United Kingdom.
There needed to be a change.
The staggering defeat for Conservatives. Hurricane Beryl heads for Mexico after tearing through parts of the Caribbean.
Everything you can think about is gone.
Also, the searing heat wave headed for the West Coast.
It's too hot for me.
We're trying here, again, to do our best.
Plus, outrage in Newfoundland. Unclaimed bodies moved to an underground garage. And tagging in to help a Canadian wrestling fan.
I did not expect the American Nightmare to turn this into a Canadian dream.
A surprise from a WWE superstar after a contest went all wrong.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina.
Good evening, everyone. Millions of voters in the United Kingdom have sent a clear message tonight in a punishing result for the Conservatives, set to suffer their worst defeat according to exit polling. Let's head straight over to London, where CTV's Michael Couture has been tracking the results. And Mike, Rishi Sunak's summer gamble did not pay off. What's next for him?
Yeah, it would seem after such a defeat, Omar, the only choice he would have would be to leave the Conservatives and to step down as their leader. Now, not all of this has been his fault, but certainly there have been a number of gaffes that really contributed to this. I mean, one has to think about him leaving that D-Day ceremony early to come back to London, and of course the betting scandal that kicked off this election campaign. Now, the Conservatives did have a lot of baggage going into this. Think about this for a moment. 5 leaders in the last 14 years, and certainly the last 3 have been remarkable for all the wrong reasons. You had Boris Johnson, who was holding those COVID-19 lockdown parties, Liz Truss, who only lasted 50 days, and now Rishi Sunak, who spent less than 2 years as the Prime Minister and looks like he's on his way out.
And now for the Labour leader expected to be the next Prime Minister, all signs are showing that this will be a strong majority. What was his strategy, Keir Starmer, through the campaign?
It's interesting because Starmer is leading Labour, which is a left-leaning party, but he has certainly moved it towards the middle of the political spectrum, hoping to broaden the appeal. And it seems to have worked. He's even frozen out some of those more extreme leftist and more socialist elements of the party, Omar. And it looks like it's worked so well that he could be the next occupant of 10 Downing Street.
All right, Michael Couture in London for us tonight. Mike, thank you. And for more on what the results mean for Canada, let's bring in former Canadian High Commissioner to the UK, Mel Capp. Mr. Capp, efforts to strike a permanent trade deal between both countries hit a roadblock earlier this year, particularly over beef and cheese. How will this Labour victory impact those discussions going forward?
Well, let's remember that cheese is our issue. We had legislation introduced in a private member's bill in the House of Commons to prohibit Canadian trade negotiators from negotiating anything to do with milk. So we are going to always have a roadblock on cheese. Having said that, trade is more important to the UK than it is to us. We have the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement with the EU, and the European Union has 300 million people, and the 60 million people of the UK need a deal with us more than we need a deal with them. And Keir Starmer will, although he hasn't made trade a major issue in this election, will undoubtedly want to carry on with us and with the EU to find new ways of working.
Now, you just alluded to the fact that those trade talks were launched because of Britain's exit from the European Union. And even though the Labour Party's platform states it will stick to that split, many believe closer links to the EU are vital to improve Britain's economy, which has been a ballot box issue. So could we see that under Keir Starmer?
Well, look, the British economy is the worst performing economy in the G7. Keir Starmer has to get investment up, and he has to get growth in the economy working again. So he will have to find ways of promoting closer links to Europe and closer links to the European Union. On July 18th, the new prime minister, likely Keir Starmer, will host 47 European heads of government to a meeting in Blenheim Palace. And they will be talking about all the ways that they can increase their links, and in particular, their trade and growth of their economies.
All right, Mr. Cap, appreciate your analysis and your perspective tonight. Thank you. Turning to Hurricane Beryl's angry path cutting across the Caribbean and now turning towards Mexico, where authorities have deployed more than 13,000 workers and members of the armed forces. CTV's Sarah Plowman on the destruction Beryl has left behind.
Beryl soaked the Cayman Islands, where they dodged a direct hit.
There are some areas that the surge did destroy some property and come out the roads. Thank God we weren't like, everyone else.
Last night, Beryl blasted by south of Jamaica, but it knocked out power, flooded this historic bridge. Destruction is widespread.
Waking up this morning to all of this is it's overwhelming.
The same storm devastated parts of Grenada and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Most of the buildings on Union Island were destroyed or damaged.
It was a scary experience.
The Red Cross is on the ground across the region. More supplies will be sent from Canada.
So in places such as Grenada, St. Vincent, and Barbados, hygiene kits and blankets are already being distributed.
Canadians living in Grenada are also jumping in to help.
So lots of water is needed up there, everything. I mean, people don't have homes. You're either getting rained on or the sun's beating on you.
Beryl is headed for Mexico next. Canadians there are bracing.
We're just doing what we can, and then all you can do is see what happens, essentially.
Forecasters say conditions will rapidly deteriorate along the east coast of the Yucatan Peninsula overnight, as the storm is expected to make landfall there early Friday. Omar.
All right, Sarah, thanks. From the storm to scorching temperatures in Western Canada, there are warnings tonight in British Columbia of an imminent heat wave. Here's CTV's Andrew Johnson.
Opinions are split at Vancouver's Spanish Banks on the first heat wave of the summer.
I try to avoid it. It's too hot for me.
Never too hot for me.
Temperatures in some areas of BC are expected to be as much as 10 to 15 degrees warmer than usual. That peak heat is forecast to roll in this weekend, first on Vancouver Island, moving east through Metro Vancouver and then hitting the interior.
California is really dealing with the brunt of it. That's where the bullseye of this event is, and it is stretching north, so we're getting a glancing blow.
Areas in the southern interior, such as Kamloops and Osoyoos in the Okanagan, could be sweating through 40-degree conditions for a stretch of several days early next week. Health experts are warning the people most at risk, including seniors, to stay hydrated and keep an eye on how hot it's getting inside their homes.
If you don't have air conditioning, it's really a great time to use the facilities, public and private, that have air conditioning available just to get respite from that heat.
Meteorologists confirm it's not going to get as hot as it did during BC's deadly heat dome event, which in 2021 claimed more than 600 lives. The peak temperature that week, 49.6, the hottest ever recorded in Canada.
The ridge bringing this blast of summer through BC is expected to move on by the middle of next week. It's heading east, where it will next heat up the prairies. Andrew Johnson, CTV News, Vancouver.
The Calgary Stampede, which bills itself as the greatest outdoor show on earth, kicks off tomorrow. But this year, it's also turned into a political flashpoint. CTV's Judy Trin explains why.
I may have done these a couple of times.
The Calgary Stampede has been a regular stop for Justin Trudeau since 2013, when he became leader of the Liberal Party. The only exceptions were during the COVID pandemic. Currently, the Liberals hold 2 seats in Alberta. One of them is in the Calgary riding of George Chahal, who called for an urgent caucus meeting after a stunning by-election loss in Toronto last week.
Perhaps this is the beginning of a bunker mentality, right? Where Justin Trudeau starts to withdraw a little bit because he doesn't want to take the public criticism. He doesn't want to take criticism from his caucus.
Unlike past years, the Stampede also won't be on the NDP leader's schedule. His provincial counterpart, Naheed Nenshi, has floated the idea of splitting from the federal party.
Lots of polling and discussion is centered around distancing the provincial party.
Things need to change.
Like the Liberals, the NDP only have 2 seats in Alberta, but they won 13 ridings in British Columbia. That's where Jagmeet Singh is launching his summer tour. The New Democrats are hoping to take advantage of the disarray in the Liberal Party.
People in those cities are looking at the Trudeau government and the fact that it has not really been capable of making the system work for people, and right now is very much mired in a lot of internal division.
Expect to see Pierre Poilievre at multiple Stampede events, including a big fundraiser. Last year's gaffe, posing with a fan wearing an anti-LGBTQ shirt, hasn't cut into Conservative support. Meanwhile, the government is scrambling to put up a united front.
I know he has the full support of Cabinet, and I know he has the full support of the vast majority of Liberal MPs.
Tomorrow, the Prime Minister will attend an Islamic cultural event in the Greater Toronto area, where he'll shore up support in a battleground riding instead of attending the Stampede. Omar.
All right, Judy, thank you. The head of Canada's spy agency revealed today he is stepping down. David Vigneault is retiring after 7 years as CSIS director, a position he called one of the most rewarding and challenging of his career. In the spring, he testified before a federal inquiry into foreign election interference. Fighting is escalating between Israel and Hezbollah militants in Lebanon. The Iran-backed group fired more than 200 rockets into northern Israel in one of the heaviest barrages in nearly 9 months of fighting. Meantime, there are new diplomatic efforts aimed at ending the war in Gaza. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has dispatched a team of negotiators to Doha to resume ceasefire talks with Hamas. Back here at home, more than 9,000 workers at Ontario's main liquor retailer will be on strike at midnight after contract negotiations collapsed.
Doug Ford just wants to make life better for his wealthy friends. That's why he's wasting upwards of $1 billion of Ontario's money to fast-track privatized alcohol sales.
The Ontario government has announced plans to open up the alcohol market and allow convenience and all grocery stores to sell beer, wine, and cocktails. A move the union insists will lead to job losses. The province is urging the union to return to the negotiating table to hammer out a deal. Wages are also a sticking point in that labor dispute. And while minimum pay is up across the country, it's not having the impact many were hoping for. CTV's Alison Bamford explains.
Adjusting the minimum wage is often a game of winners and losers.
The theory would predict that if the wage goes up, employers will hire possibly fewer workers.
Saskatchewan has the lowest minimum wage in the country at $14 an hour. An increase in October will put the province level with Alberta, still at the bottom of the pack at $15. Nunavut is the highest at $19 an hour, and BC leads the provinces at $17.40. Mixed reaction in Saskatchewan, where there's hope a raise could help close the gap.
I think it's a good step that they're increasing minimum wage, but I think it needs to be higher.
But for smaller businesses, it might come at a bigger cost.
It might mean that businesses have to pass those increased costs along to their consumers, which no one wants to see at this time.
Ontario, Manitoba, and PEI are also slated for marginal increases this fall. It comes at a time when Canada's youth unemployment rate is the highest it's been in years. Some economists say cost-cutting at businesses and a lower interest in young people wanting minimum wage work could be at play.
When I've spoken with employers of smaller businesses, they often say that, well, we can't find anybody who wants to work, right, at the wages that we are paying.
Statistics Canada says more students may start to look for jobs in the summer, which could impact the unemployment rate and offer a better sense of how young workers are faring. Alison Bamford, CTV News, Regina.
Coming up.
I expected to be an announcement.
Why one province is storing bodies in a parking garage. Health officials in Newfoundland and Labrador are facing fresh criticism this week over how they are dealing with the deceased, now in underground freezers in a parking garage. Here's CTV's Garrett Berry.
Somewhat quietly over the past few weeks, freezers full of unclaimed remains have been moved behind these walls, inside this underground hospital parking garage. This is another temporary solution, say health officials, who are dealing with a difficult storage problem. Unclaimed human bodies that nobody can yet bury, piling up in the morgue.
We're trying here, again, to do our best in doing right by the families. And again, the big thing for us is that, these decedents have a respectful burial.
But critics are getting frustrated. It's been months now since politicians first raised this issue, when the remains were in a receiving bay by a dumpster outside Newfoundland's biggest hospital. Since then, the only indications are that numbers are rising.
This is like, you gotta be kidding me. I expected to be an announcement. The next announcement would be that these were all going to be provided the proper burials that they should have.
Officials here haven't said exactly how many bodies are unclaimed or why, but it appears the issue is growing across the country. In Ontario, the number of unclaimed remains has more than doubled since 2019.
One part of the solution here will be an expanded morgue, and health officials say they hope to have that in place by October.
But opposition politicians are also asking government to increase subsidies to cremate or bury individuals when their families can't afford it.
Give them what anyone deserves in this day and age, I mean, no person, in life, you live your life, you don't want to be in a morgue, in a cooler down in the basement of a hospital.
They say the cost of living is hurting families, even at the end of life. Garrett Berry, CTV News, St. John's.
Still ahead. From Saskatchewan to Seattle, breaking barriers in the NHL. A Saskatchewan coach is smashing barriers in the world of professional hockey. CTV's Paul Hollingsworth on her incredible rise and how she's opening doors and inspiring others.
Take it down ice into a 3v2. Do you work to get your gap?
Jessica Campbell has made hockey history. Being named assistant coach for the Seattle Kraken comes after years of paying her dues at numerous levels.
If the team has success and that my impact is a good one, then could potentially open up doors for others.
This marks the second time Campbell has broken through a coaching barrier in pro hockey. The 32-year-old from Saskatchewan, who was also a player on Canada's women's national team, spent the previous 2 seasons as an assistant coach in the American Hockey League. She was the first female coach to reach that level.
That's never really where my focus is. It's always on the work.
According to Montreal PWHL head coach Corey Chevry, more women could soon be behind NHL benches.
Jess is certainly blazing that trail for everyone. She's kind of setting the precedent and kind of laying out the roadmap.
The TSN hockey analyst Cheryl Pounder sees Campbell as more than just a trailblazer.
Let's go, Hits. Set the pace.
Respected by her peers in both men's and women's hockey, Pounder says Campbell has earned this promotion through hard work and a sterling reputation.
Playing at every different level and the work ethic and making sure that she was ready to seize the opportunity. I was emotional about it.
With that emotion also comes excitement for future possible opportunities. If a female can become an assistant coach in the NHL, what about being a head coach someday?
2 words, why not?
Pounder points to the recent growth and popularity of women's hockey as proof anything is possible. Paul Hollingsworth, CTV News, Halifax.
And a very different spectator sport in New York today.
3, 2, 1, go!
Nathan's famous hot dog eating contest on Coney Island, a 4th of July staple. Chicago's Patrick Bertoletti ate 58, winning the men's title, while Canada's Darian Thomas from Orillia, Ontario, wolfed down 28. Florida's Miki Sudo ate 51, which is a new world record for women. That's a lot. Italy has issued its top warning for volcanic activity, a red alert. Just some incredible images here. One of the world's most active volcanoes, Mount Etna on the island of Sicily, is erupting. It's putting on a dazzling show, spewing lava into the sky. After the break, from a major letdown to a stunning surprise.
Hey, how's it going? Is this, who is this?
This is Crystal Gentle, but I'd love to introduce you and Mike to the American Nightmare, Cody Rhodes.
Oh my, holy sh**.
How a wrestling star turned one fan's disappointment into a dream. Well, the hopes of a wrestling fan in Ontario were slammed after he scored tickets to a major WWE event, only to find out that he couldn't go. But then his fortunes changed. CTV's Spencer Turcotte has more.
That is amazing. We're thrilled you're excited for the event.
Mike Ashkowe couldn't believe it after learning he had won 2 tickets through a Toys R Us contest to see the highly anticipated WWE Money in the Bank event in Toronto. He made his request right away for an accommodation.
I need accessible seating. I'm in a wheelchair. This has got to, you got to know this first. And then Toys R Us said, hey, yep, that's cool. We got you covered.
Only to learn the next day he wouldn't be able to go.
Unfortunately, accessibility tickets are all sold out. We're terribly sorry for this. These tickets were secured for us through our vendor partnership quite some time ago. At this time, we can offer you the cash value for the prize, $301.99. My heart just sank.
Deflated because he wouldn't be seeing his favorite WWE superstar.
The one I really want to see is Cody Rhodes. I've been following him for a couple of years.
When CTV News learned about the situation, we reached out to Toys R Us, MLSE, which owns Scotiabank Arena, and the WWE for clarity about where things went wrong. And then, during the interview with Ashkowe, a phone call came from the WWE.
Spencer.
Hey, how's it going? Is this, who is this?
This is Crystal Gentle, but I'd love to introduce you and Mike to the American Nightmare, Cody Rhodes.
Oh my, holy sh**. Hi.
Hi, Mike. Hi, Spencer. I just wanted to give you a quick shout. Chris pointed this out. I saw a lot of people on social who had mentioned what was going on in the situation. I'm so sorry that I'm sure you've figured it out, though. The cool thing here, though, is that we do have some tickets that are for you, tickets that are compliant and for you. Not only that, we're going to pay for your transportation and come to Money in the Bank. We can't a good fan like you sitting on the sidelines. So I'm sorry that happened, but glad we can come together.
This is going to sound so cheesy as but I did not expect the American Nightmare to turn this into a Canadian dream. Like, holy dude.
A Canadian dream that brought tears to his wife's eyes. Both Toys R Us and MLSE responded, saying the issue has now been resolved. No reason was given for the accessibility gap. Ashkowe just hopes a lesson was learned and is thrilled the American Nightmare turned this nightmare into a dream come true. Spencer Turcotte, CTV News, Guelph.
That's a great ending. That's a snapshot of this Thursday. For all of us at CTV National News, thank you for watching, and good night.
CTV National News, Canada's #1 newscast.